This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Zehr. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Zehr.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 554. This is your weekly spoiler-free place for Star Wars community and conversation. I'm your host, Dan Zehr, thrilled to be talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. You can support Coffee with Kenobi by following the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Help spread the word by tweeting that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. CWK is a proud member of the Spreaker Prime program. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. If you are interested in a no-cost, no-obligation quote for your next vacation, check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and let them know Dan Zehr and Coffee with Kenobi sent you. Thank you also to members of the CWK Alliance. Find out how you can join the Alliance for as little as $1 a month and get access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and much more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. On today's blockbuster show, Jean Bolte of Industrial Light and Magic joins me to talk about light and magic and all the amazing things that she has worked on for the company. She's got some great stories, and you are going to love this show. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee it's a great honor for me to introduce from Industrial Light and Magic. She is a digital texture painter, but that is just the surface of the amazing things she does. You probably saw her on Light and Magic, which is on Disney+. Please welcome Jean Bolte.
Hi, nice to be here.
It's very nice to chat with you. I must say, it's quite surreal to see you on this epic 6-part series. It's blowing up Disney+. And to be able to talk to you, I will say your story, and we talked a little bit before, was quite inspiring because of how you got your start and your love, and I'm not trying to rhyme, of art. Talk to me sort of about how art was a wonderful avenue for you to find your career path.
Oh, well, early on, really early on, I realized, like most of the guys in the show, I think we all came to the same realization that art was like this drug that didn't have any side effects, and that we could tap into that anytime, anywhere we were, and no matter where our surroundings were, which, there were no limitations. You didn't have to be in some place that was exotic or inspiring. I love my hometown, but Kansas City was often, I often felt that I was a little closed in. It was like in the center of the country. I was not exposed to a lot of things that you get on the coasts or in other countries, but that didn't matter because I had the most beautiful, and I think to this day, it is the most inspiring art gallery I've ever been in my life, which is the Nelson Atkins Gallery of Art in Kansas City, where I knew every piece of art in that gallery because my mom would drop me off and I would spend the whole day there take classes sometimes, but mostly I'd also just wander around and look at everything. So that was a kind of like my art training. I'm actually not formally art trained. I never had proper training in college. I've done classes kind of, as one does on your own. But my grandmother was the one who showed me what it was like to be in a studio. She had a studio in her house that was just a makeshift space, but it had light on 3 sides, and it had I think it even had Oriental rugs on the floor. My grandmother had an ocelot and a series of monkeys. She had an alligator. She had a macaw, not all at once. But her house was just full of life. And one of the things that was part of her, the richness of her world, was that she painted, and she taught me how to paint. She got me going on oil paints early. Like, she was like, we don't have to we don't have to make this kind of remedial for you and elementary for you. We're going to throw you straight in here so that you know what it's like to use the best materials. And I am indebted to her forever for showing me, that I could do it.
I feel like that really stood out to me from your story. When I believe it was the 5th episode in Light and Magic, when you started to talk about your relationship with your grandmother and her inspiring and encouraging you to tap into yourself and who you are. Obviously, as an educator, that's something we hope to do with our students. So that really spoke to me. I'm quite sure that when school starts for me, that there will be students that will be there that will just need to know, hey, you are not alone. There are people that have the same passions as you and the same interests as you. And I actually thought, long before I knew I was going to get the good fortune to chat with you, I actually thought about showing that clip in my classes because that does make a big difference.
Well, I'm very happy that you think that might be useful to your students, and I also have a message to them. I always, if I get a chance to speak in the schools, I raise my hand. I want to be there. I think one of the most important things that we can do is to catch them early. And sorry,
That's okay.
I stopped it.
It was probably Ian.
Okay. Ian, what are you doing? So where was my train of thought? About catch them early because young kids are naturally, they don't have an editor. And all of a sudden, I have seen this over and over again. I have judged art in the community fairgrounds. They hit a certain age, by middle school, and they shut down and they think I'm not good enough. And so I will often, when I'm showing the kids some artwork from our incredible art department, I'll stop it after about 4 or 5 slides. And I'll say, I bet some of you out there are thinking that you could never do this. And I'm here to tell you that I do not believe that artistic talent is innate. It has to do with attention and caring and looking and doing your own work and practicing, really studying things and having, a desire to keep going, keep doing it, and you will eventually get there. And also, there is no such, having everything be photoreal is not necessarily the goal. What the goal is to kind of find what your own voice, your own, view of the world. And it might be a mess, like de Kooning, who terrified me when I went to the art gallery in Kansas City. Or it might be really tight, but it's all valid. And the main thing is just to not feel that you have to, either you have it or you don't, because I don't buy that.
Here, very well said. And so that's something I feel like that comes throughout this entire series, Light and Magic, as well. This notion that there are different people from different backgrounds, but it said many times, you've said it, other people said it, there was no ego with ILM. What was it like for you first breaking into the company? I know you said you were in London, and you would go to the theaters, which I really loved. And then you found your way to ILM. What was that path like for you?
Oh, well, so, I was working with the Jim Henson Company primarily. I was freelancing. So as soon as you had a show or had a job to do, you would be part of kind of a band of gypsies, and you'd all work on that at Elstree Studio or Pinewood Studio or Bray or whatever the different studios were. And then when the show was over, you were done. And so there was a constant kind of reshuffling. And I was utterly shocked by several things when I got to ILM. I could go through a list. One of them was the fact that it was semi-steady work, like the same people were getting work. And so they became like a family. And if you had, you might have there was a lot of break in service, but you kind of had a sense that if you were one of the group, the gang, that you'd be called back, eventually, if you just hang on, long enough to kind of, keep paying your rent, you'd come back. that was a wonderful thing. And the stagehands used to call it the country club because it was, this luxury of having some steady work. The other thing was that had been used to seeing a fair amount of abuse of women verbally, because this was before Anita Hill, and also the unions were very strict in London. And so I was often subjected to just got used to it. I just thought they were being stupid. You'd go out and a woman, oh my God, it's a woman on the set, from these guys up on their catwalks, far away, right? Cowardly up there.
Yes.
And I got to ILM and they were incredible gentlemen on the set, the stagehands. And they also were not so strict. I said, I'd like to move a light just a little bit while I set this up. They were like, go ahead, just move it. And I was shocked by that. But the main thing, which you touched on just now with your question, was this amazing feeling of it being an egalitarian place for everybody. I mean, you kind of knew, you knew that Dennis and Lauren, the head of the shop, and all the, the people who at Keno's were important, and you had to obviously listen to them, but they would invite you to make comments. And there was just this sense that we were all really equally capable of having an opinion, and that when it was the right time and the right place to speak your mind was not only okay, it was welcomed. And I think also there was, they talk about industrial light and magic. Well, I think really the magic was that kind of alchemy of these particular people who had been put together early on by George Lucas and John Dykstra, those people who found the original team. Those people really set the bar very high, and not just in terms of the quality of the work they were doing and their dedication, but also in terms of their lack of ego and their kindness. And that and George also, I really believe, that came from him too, was this top-down sense that was that's what made ILM what it was that mentality, in addition to being at the top of their game. And you had to be good if you were going to work there. I mean, they didn't, you couldn't just get a job and find your way into being useful. You had to be good. And we all knew that, we carried our heads high. We knew that, but we also really felt that it was about the fact that people who were jerks didn't make it. They got weeded out. They were not really weeded out. They just wouldn't get the call back, and it was always the people who were excellent at collaborating, because that was just crucial, that we all had that ability to collaborate well together. Or it didn't, if you could be brilliant and genius at something, but if you couldn't collaborate, really just go do something else. Go do your own thing.
This is just so perfect. This really is, because what do we talk about in education? One of the things we talk about is the importance of collaboration, of working together, of trying to see another point of view besides your own, and finding that dynamic that can only happen in a group. So thank you for that. And of course, I can't have you on the show and not ask you a little bit more about George Lucas. I had the good fortune to meet George one time. It was at the solo premiere. It was about 30 seconds, but I felt like I was dancing on air. You have worked with George. George. What I keep hearing, and you spoke on this just now, the magic, a lot of it was the collaboration, the camaraderie, the family thing. And that has to trickle down from somewhere. George Lucas, it seems like, from what I've gathered, is he was just really good at finding good people. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, clearly, I mean, George didn't find me. I was way late. He picked his original team, but of course he also funneled that through the key creatives that were in the first and second show of the series. And also look at his casting. Look at the people who were in American Graffiti. Those, so many of them went on to be huge stars. He had an eye for that, and I can't say what that was. He had an instinct. I think he just had an instinct, and then he would turn them loose and let them be good at what they were doing. I remember, George was his personality and his style is to be rather quiet. I had worked with Jim Henson, who knew the name of everybody in the shop and would come always around. You'd be working, you'd have his shoulder, his head would be there. And George Lucas was not as visible in the shop. It was always really wonderful when he did come around to see things. But I think one of the things I was so impressed with when I watched this series was we all know George Lucas is a visionary, but did I know that he had that kind of vision of the computer work so early on that he would really push and push and push for innovation before people thought it was pointless or absurd to be going down this path. And he there he was. And I loved at the end one where he goes out on the stagecraft, which is our latest innovation at ILM, which is to have this LED screen so that everything seems, the director and all the actors, it's back to having everything available in camera. You can walk out and you can see that you're on a set. It feels like a real set. And George said, "Oh, this is the thing I was wanting to do." What was it, 30, 40 years ago? I don't know how many years ago, but a long time. And I that stopped my clock. I was like, wow, George actually had this in his head so long ago. And here we are finally catching up with his vision.
Let's take a quick break and return with more from Gene Bolte. I'm Dan Zehr, and this is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
So you obviously worked with him on episode 2, Attack of the Clones. We go from morphing. I love that Dennis says we've been spelling morphing wrong. It's actually MORF.
I didn't even know that.
Isn't that great? And so then you do this amazing work, and I like that you said, when it came to like the furry creatures, that was something that was one of your layers of expertise. How did that come about?
In London, I was lucky enough to be part of a team of people, and they were teaching me to do some very innovative work with fur transfer. So what the process which was briefly described with white glue was an old taxidermy technique that they used to use wax. And so basically what you would do is take the fur, lay it out the way you wanted, get the fur so that it would go from short to long and all the different things. And then put a stuff that was like a really intense hair gel, and then cut the backing off of the fur and then embed that in a foam latex in a mold. So you'd lay the fur in the mold, then you'd put the foam latex layer next, so that when you pulled that out of the mold, you had a furry, stretchy thing that would hold the hair in place. So I had a fair amount of time with that. And then I just got to be known that was my little corner, because everybody freelance, you have hopefully multiple skills, but you might have your kind of area that was yours. And I got to have a reputation for really loving to work with animal models, miniatures, costumes, what have you. And so that was how I was lucky enough to get selected to work on Willow and come over to California and do that.
And where you were part of one of the most innovative and important moments in the history of visual effects, which transitions you to a lot of things, but eventually you are running some very important, powerful things in episode 2. What was it like to work on? I mean, we knew episode 1 had already come out. It was a massive success. Financially, it was a huge success, and people love it. And Ewan McGregor came on Coffee with Kenobi a few months ago, and he said, hey, the fans' reactions to the prequels are why we're doing Obi-Wan Kenobi. Talk about working on episode 2 and being a part of such an amazing story.
Oh, well, episode 2 was, every single time we did something, it seemed like almost time we did anything, there was some new leap, there was a new leap, and it was, there was all this, the scale of the whole thing was just another step forward. And so working with George, I remember going up there and I had the great honor of recreating Yoda as a computer generated character. And Yoda is one of the most memorable moments of my life watching films was when I first saw Yoda on the screen. And what Frank Oz and Stuart Freeborn did with that character, I still think it's never been duplicated, in my opinion. And I remember my brain just went into this sort of vapor lock when I was sitting in the screening in the theater watching it, because I was like, it's not a real thing, but it's not a puppet. It was like just this, I couldn't figure out what I was looking at because it just seemed like it was breathing and thinking. And so when I was given the chance to recreate him, I really took that honor extremely seriously. And going up to show George the stages of how, Yoda was up at the ranch, how it was progressing, I was awfully happy that he and John Knoll both felt like it was coming along. I mean, of course, I look at it now and I'm like, oh, we just do it all differently. But also, we wanted to be true to the fact that Yoda was not hyper sophisticated. I mean, part of his charm is the fact that he has his own quality. And it's not necessarily like, my close up on my hand, with all the wrinkles and everything perfectly. That wasn't what it was about. So we didn't want to I'm kind of glad that we didn't get all the way there to where we could have, if we made him again now, we'd be tempted to push that envelope all the way up to where we are now. And I think you would maybe do a disservice to the original Yoda, who was a foam latex creature that Stuart and Frank Oz just made feel like he was real. He was real.
Honestly, I don't know if you could tell, but as you were talking about Yoda and bringing him to life and how I got tears in my eyes because you created you and your team created magic. Yoda in that film, there's only been 2 times in my life where I've actually stood up and clapped and cheered. One was a little bit later when the Hulk smashes Loki in the end of Avengers.
Oh, yeah.
But the other time is when Yoda comes out at the end of episode 2. So you helped to create so much joy for so many people. What is it like when you were first in a theater and you heard people erupt seeing Yoda in episode 2?
Well, I mean, you're asking somebody who's going to only see what they would change. They're only, I can step back and I can love the stuff that I work on. I can.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I can do that. But I do remember looking at it and thinking, oh, I wish I'd just done that a little bit differently. So
the humility is inspiring to me. I can tell you, I love what you work on unabashedly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's going to always, what is the saying? It's never finished. It's abandoned. I mean, you just have to, you get to a point where you have to walk away. And that's kind of how we are every day with our work. We're hired at ILM because of, not because of 0 to 80%. We keep our jobs at ILM because we go from 80 to 100, but that 80 to 100 is what takes often far longer than the first chunk of the work, just to get those details and to keep caring about it,
That makes sense. I've heard Steven Spielberg plenty of times say that the only movie that he can watch that he did was Raiders of the Lost Ark over and over again, because otherwise he just looks at things and thinks what he wish he would have changed or tweaked. Is there a certain work that you have where you think, you know what, that was it? I would never need to do anything with that one. That was it.
I have a friend of mine, Steve Walton, who I work with. I don't remember which one of us coined the phrase. It was probably him, but that when you look at on the screen and you can smell it, that's when you're getting somewhere.
Ooh.
And so, yeah, once in a while, there is that sensation of having, going, okay, yeah, I think that was, that shot anyway was pretty good. I have a couple of my moments in Thor Ragnarok where he's in the arena, the Taika Waititi directed version of not this one, the one before,
Sure.
where I felt, the sweat was on him and his gladiator costume looked pretty good, and I kind of felt like, okay, that felt good to me. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. There was a moment in the recent Jurassic Park where I worked on the one of the dinosaur with it, the Parasaurolophus, and he's kind of fighting and he's being tamed, and there was some moments there. I mean, going back in the past, that's a question I'd have to really think hard about, because I'm sure that goes back. The model shop, there were things in Hook where I worked on, and with so many beautiful shots. But often, why? It's because it's not me that made it look beautiful. We are such a big team of people that the compositors, the people who come after me, who drop the thing into the scene and make sure that it's beautifully lit and take care of all those little details. I'm indebted to those people, because they take the stuff that I do and make it look good. And the animators too, everybody's their parts all play a part. So, I can't actually often take credit if something really looks great. It's only because I had a part in it, not because I nailed it.
I love that. I think that yet again, you are inspiring me, and I have no doubt our listeners. So lastly, I want to be very respectful of your time. You've been so gracious with, and I thank you. I love, and I feel like you've talked about this throughout, but talk to me about the excitement of working in visual effects today.
Visual effects today is still something that I get up and I look forward to getting to work. It's the model shop had a certain excitement because you go in there and you were, physically with a team of people, and we were all family, kind of battling it out together. But yet I think that at ILM, that is still very much the case. And even, with the computer graphics and even working from home because of COVID, I'm actually going into work now a little bit one day just to be back and I'm trying to get my friends to come in. I'm like, come on, I miss you. But I'm lucky enough to work on the next Indiana Jones right now. And I'm with some people who have been at the company a long time too. I've been there I've lost track, 34 years or something. And there are people on the show, a lot of people in the show who've clocked up 20 years and more. John Knowles working on it, who and Robert Weaver, our effects supervisor. Anyway, the sense there is very much like these are my people. These are my friends, and I really want to get in there. I don't want to disappoint them. I want to be able to carry my weight. And when I see, it's all about the render. And if I have a good render in the morning, I'm having a good day. Meaning what I see on the results of my work or the results of our collaborative work. And if I don't, I'm having a terrible day. And I won't stop, until we turn it around. But I really do feel like there is, ILM is, I've heard this from many people who've gone to other companies, who have come from other companies, that our culture at ILM is incredibly supportive. And that is the reason that I still love what I do.
I don't think we could end it on any better of a note. Jean, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. And of course, your amazing talents. You've given us a lot to think about and a lot to everybody listening, find your passion, find your job. I say that to my students all the time. And don't settle for anything less, not only from your best, but from your peers. You work together, you can achieve so much. Jean, thank you so much for being a guest on Coffee with Kenobi.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dan. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Zehr, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Coffee with Kenobi. I want to thank Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic, and of course, the amazing Jean Bolte for joining me for a cup of coffee. I also want to thank the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel at coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. This is your place to go for a no-cost, no-obligation quote so you can get an idea of what your vacation might look like and not feel pressured to have to pull that trigger if you're not ready. They can help you plan your magical vacation to the Galactic Star Cruiser, Galaxy's Edge, the theme parks, the cruise lines, Star Celebration next year in London, and you can also support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. CWK Live is every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time at coffeewithkenobi.com/live. You can also go to our Facebook group, CWK Cafe, for Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler, and drama-free place. And I will never forget the amazing CWK Alliance, and Coffee with Kenobi is possible because of the members of the CWK Alliance. Thanks to all of you, the podcast, Facebook Live, event coverage, and so much more comes to life. Find out how you can help the show for as little as $1 a month by joining the CWK Alliance, and you will receive access to CWK Pour-Over, an exclusive weekly audio and video podcast not heard anywhere else. Members of the CWK Alliance All-Star level receive a video edition of CWK Pour-Over and access to a private Facebook group as well. Plus, CWK Alliance Grand Masters can join me for a monthly live video call. Find out more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. And most importantly, 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to St. Jude Children's Hospital. The website is coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. You can email me, danz at coffeewithkenobi.com. Just connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zehr, MRZEHR, on Instagram at Dan Zehr CWK, and on LinkedIn. Coffee with Kenobi is on social media. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. And on Twitter, we now have a super follower option where you can go and get exclusive access to private conversations, inside Star Wars, Coffee with Kenobi, and so much more. Give the show a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, and you can also subscribe to Coffee with Kenobi's YouTube channel. Please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. The TeePublic store is coffeewithkenobi.com/shop to get access or to be able to purchase the Coffee with Kenobi logo on t-shirts, hoodies, and so much more. And if you're going to start a podcast or a blog or expand your brand, go to danzmedia.com where I can help you get that process started. I'm also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. Thanks again for joining me on this very special episode. Have a great week and weekend, my friends. And remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.